I get a lot of migraine headaches, so as a kid, when I'd get a bad one, I'd go bug my dad, and he'd say, "Oh, I have a brilliant solution. Just stub your toe really hard and you won't even be able to think about your headache," which is the most brilliant advice anyone has ever given me. To this day, I have never encountered wisdom of such magnitude. But disclaimer, just in case you guys want to try it at home, I don't suggest it. It's not really worthwhile. You're trading one physical pain for a worse physical pain, and if it's not worse, then it's not taking your mind off the original, and you're stuck with two physical pains. Pretty sucky. That said, there's a huge difference between physical pain and psychological pain, where arguably the latter is far, far worse. And I bring this up because according to psychologists around the world, the #1 leading cause to deriving pleasure from physical masochism is the exact logic my dad used to use to troll me with. Sad as it is, the mindset, whether subconscious or otherwise, is that enough physical pain will take their mind off their psychological pain. Whether that pain was caused by depression or some other clinical mental illness, or was caused by a painful experience, there's no better way to distract one's mind than sending it pain signals from other parts of the body. When I think anime masochist, I think Ban from the 7 Deadly Sins. Well, and I kind of think of myself too. You wouldn't believe the hate I get from my honest descriptions, but I just freaking love doing them so damn much, I just don't care. But back to the 7 Deadly Sins, if you asked most people to describe that little group in as concise of a method possible, especially in the first season, they would say, and I know this from personal experience, 7 really powerful close friends just having a great time together on their adventure. And truth be told, even though that's wrong, anywhere past the surface level, I'm always happy to hear that, because despite some of us knowing otherwise, that's exactly the vibe they're supposed to be emitting. Because while masochism is a trait attributed to Ban, one of the top symptoms of depression, or rather trying to conceal depression, is being overly jovial and rambunctious in every menial task. As a real-life example, look at Robin Williams. The guy was a walking, talking ball of hilarity. He made everyone crack up, and he was always laughing. But he was depressed to the point that he took his own life. Ban is always humming, whistling, dancing, and singing, and in fact in the manga all of his speech bubbles end with music notes, again nodding to his jovial way of speech. I was depressed for a nice block over my high school years, and it was over that time that I mastered the art of not dealing with the core of the problem and just putting up a happy facade. It kinda did serve the purpose of helping me socially, but at the same time it did not help my mental situation at all. In fact, it just worsened it, leaving it to fester. Putting up the jovial facade is an easy way out and not a good solution in the slightest. I watched the first season of the 7 Deadly Sins a long time ago, not thinking into it because it was before my YouTube years. And if I were to describe it at that point, it would also be a fun adventure of a bunch of powerful knights having a great time saving the kingdom. One of the perks of my current job making YouTube videos is I get to actually look into the series that I enjoy, find out exactly why they speak to me, and see if I can transmit that into a video that will potentially speak to you. My 3 favorite characters of the 7 Deadly Sins, as I've said many times, are Ban, Meliodas, and Escsanor. And the common denominator between the 3 of them is that they all keep up a facade, be it jovial in Ban, complacent in Meliodas, or prideful in Escsanor, even though they're suffering inside. An interesting theme, because the facade of the series held up well in the first season, is a fun adventure of a bunch of powerhouse knights having a great time saving the kingdom. But beneath, it's something darker. Just like so many people that suffer from depression hold up the facade of a fun, upbeat, optimistic fellow until eventually they unfortunately crash, it doesn't take a psychologist genius to understand that's kind of what happened to Etika 2 weeks ago. Poor guy was suppressing depression of some intensity, he got whacked by an abnormal amount of stress, and he crashed. It really genuinely hurts me to hear that people say it's a publicity stunt, because there are so many people in that same mental situation that understands him very clearly, me for one. The 7 Deadly Sins is all about that jovial facade, concealing massive mental turmoil, and I believe that's why it speaks to me and so many others on a deeper level than pure outlandish shonen fun, while simultaneously having that outlandish shonen fun we all still love about it. Now, I don't want you guys to start worrying about me or anything. I'm okay. In fact, for the most part, I've moved past my issues, and I am a genuinely happy dude. And in a nutshell, if I'd have to say how I got out of it, it would probably be a combo of actually understanding myself, obtaining a sense of accomplishment, and being useful helping other people. And now, this is why Ban is is my favorite character in the 7 Deadly Sins, and probably in my top 10 support characters of all time. I realize I'm laying out what I love about the series here so far, and no, I'm not avoiding analyzing Ban, because Ban fully embodies the theme of the series better than any other character. So everything I've said until now is important to keep in mind for the rest of the video as well. He watched his love die before his eyes, where she could have lived, but instead chose to grant Ban immortality so he can suffer eternally, unable to do anything about it. He'll resort to Masochism, but even that wears off eventually. As he grows numb to everything, he'll begin masking his pain, laughing and joking, and even joining a new family called the X-Force. I'm sorry, I mean the 7 Deadly Sins. But if you got the X-Force reference, I love you. This interim family that adopted him to heal his wounds became an almost genuine family. Ban and Meliodas became the best of friends and my personal favorite duo in all of anime. Now, this is where I'm going to try to accentuate Ban's insanely relatable character development in 10 steps that show the growth of someone in that rotting mindset he's in. A rotting mindset that unfortunately so many people know so well. Step number 1 was mopey, sad loner Ban, right after the tragedy where his mental burden took root. At this point in the story, when he bonds with the captain, we enter step number 2. Ban's concealing his suffering and letting it fester. But at the same time, he's made important social bonds that are understatedly tremendous help as far as healing mental trauma. Step 3. The sins broke up the first time. Step 3 is the relapse step. Ban was nowhere near cured by the end of step number 2, so the moment step number 2 shatters, so does he, and he winds up in Bast Dungeon experiencing the worst of tortures day and night to no avail. Relapses suck big time, not only because you're back to step 1, but it's worse to an extent because faith is also lost. Maybe nothing can pull that person out of their mental predicament. But still, the 7 Deadly Sins regroup. He's back in his step 2 state of mind, but because of this relapse, he subconsciously does not trust this lovely camaraderie to pull him out of his heartache. So that's why step 4 in his development is very similar to step 2, except this time instead of hopeful for the future, he doubts it. Adding doubt to any stressful psychological state is very not good, to the point that when King wanted to kill Ban fully accepted it with open arms, saying it was deserved. Doubtful of progression forward, in the Capital of the Dead arc, he met Elaine again in spiritual form, meaning there was some remnant of her remaining, and there may even be a way to get her back. And that's step 5 in Ban's mental development, reclaiming hope once again. Naive, unlikely hope, but it's hope nonetheless, and in that state, grasping straws is sometimes the best thing one can do. This is not a hope in his friends, the other sins, healing his wounds, but it's a hope placed in reviving his love. That's why step 6 is powerful, because that's when the goddesses told Ban they'll bend some rules and revive his love, his simultaneous source of pleasure and agony. But that's under the condition that he does the unthinkable and kills his best friend, Meliodas. While I loved Ban immensely up to this point, it's from now on that solidified him as a top-tier character. Aside from the effect this had on the narrative, making you begin to question what is good and what is bad. Are all demons bad guys while all goddesses good guys? Well, this is a pretty outrageous request. This request the goddesses made of Ban is insufferable. Ignoring Ban's psychological state for a moment, his theme in the narrative is a fascinating toggle between ultimate greed and ultimate selflessness. In his backstory, he wanted to steal the Fountain of Youth, which rumor has it is secretly made of Hashirama's jizz. Just saying. And he relentlessly tried again and again, stopping at nothing to satiate his greed and get his hands on something priceless. This is the sin of greed. But the moment he heard that taking the fountain would destroy the king's forest, he didn't even second guess himself. He immediately, after days of anguish and failed attempts, just gave up on his objective for the sake of others. This is just one instance, but this is Ban's defining personality trait past the psychological trauma and outlandish mannerisms, which makes the goddess's request so powerful. Does he commit the act of ultimate greed and kill his best friend for himself, or does he commit the act of ultimate selflessness, where he discards the one thing that could bring him happiness for the sake of his best friend? Thematically, that's why the goddess's request is amazing. Now, psychologically, it's even more amazing. Even more than the moral dilemma he found himself in, he has to try to make the right choice while suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, someone with PTSD is someone who's suffered a trauma in their life that can constantly be awakened at any moment by some form of trigger. No, not the 2018 meaning of triggered, which may or may not be utter bollocks. I mean actual psychologically triggered. If a rape victim even hears of rape, it could be extremely painful to them as an example. This request by the goddesses is more than a little reminder. This is saying you could do something about it right now. It's just, a little unthinkable cost. And for a little period of time there, it beats him. and Ban tries to kill the cat. Wow, dude, not cool. But unfortunately, I get it. I've been in a position where something along these lines have almost beaten me, and it's a really crappy position because no matter what choice is made, regardlessly, regret will be thrown into the mix. You'll either regret making the moral decision and losing your hope of salvation, or you'll regret the immoral decision because it was immoral. Now, that's Ban's psychological development step 7, because Ban tried, at least for a short period of time, to kill Meliodas, and in retrospect, it destroyed him. It used to be purely past trauma caused by others that made him suffer. So natural reaction is the facade of happiness covering the sadness within. But now, thanks to the hell of regret plaguing Ban's mind, his trauma evolved into self-hate as well. That's plain to see. At the beginning of the 7 Deadly Sins 10 Commandments season, which I personally like to refer to as season 2, since, you know, it's the second season, even though Netflix clearly has yet to master the art of addition. Ban, on his search for a way to revive Elaine, with Jericho tagging along, is never happy. His facade is ripped to shreds. No more singing, no more dancing, no more laughing, no more joking. He's sad in earnest seriousness at all times, because there's no pain that he's trying to hide at this point. He just utterly detests his own existence to the core. The thing is, in my personal experiences, I've never been driven to this point. I've never hated myself. But what's scary is, in retrospect, had I made a single different decision than I actually did, I know for a fact I would be where Ban is now, in step 7. And from my current vantage point, hating oneself is the saddest thing in the world. Step 8 is the rebound, and that's because of Meliodas' wholehearted forgiveness. Now, it's not a full rebound, because Elaine was quasi-revived. He did get reassurance for the first time that he may actually eventually be able to revive her. But the thing I like about this step 8 is the repetition of themes and Ban's obvious character development. Remember Ban's moral quandary in step number 7? Goddesses say, kill Meliodas to revive Elaine, and if not, perhaps lose all hope of ever seeing Elaine again. Well, I got emotional 3 times watching the 7 Deadly Sins series. The first time was at the end of Meliodas' training arc, which I made a whole video on. And this is that second time. In step 7, where Ban selflessly completely caved into his greed and succumbed to psychological trauma, which caused him to try to kill Meliodas, and in turn that destroyed him. It was thanks to this growth since then, and the forgiveness of his true best friend, and this is why I say they're the best duo in anime, that he embraced the quasi-revived Elaine and said, I have to make the right choice this time, and save my best friend. Goodbye. Because through beating Meliscula, Elaine would dissipate, and thematically, he overcame what he couldn't in the past. This is the same exact situation as we saw in step 7, except this time Ban won. That's why this is like the most touching scene in the whole series. Someone carrying his insane load of mental baggage, standing in front of the love he lost, that scarred him for eternity, but he bit his lip, made the right choice with a smile on his face, and saved his friend. Or at least tried. I've heard a lot of people tell me that they appreciate that the 7 Deadly Sins does not have the power of friendship, but they're wrong. Meliodas forgiving Ban, and Ban right here sacrificing a potential cure to his trauma to save him, that's the ultimate power of friendship. The only thing that changed for Ban between step 7 and step 8 is that forgiveness that solidified Meliodas as a real best friend. But that said, everyone needs a best friend. It's the only potential way to pull yourself out of the darkness. As just an example from my YouTube career so far, when I started making videos for years, my channel did not grow at all. My Social Blade has the most tragic anime backstory of all of AniTube, and this graph only starts at 2016. It's been looking even shabbier than that, adding on an extra year. And if not for the friends I've made along the way, I would not still be doing this at all. I mean, obviously it's foolish to even compare this to what Ban went through, but a good friend is so sorrowfully underrated, and I luckily made a lot of good friends here. And I especially wanted to thank Briggs, cause, well, aside from him helping me out through this entire journey, he's the one who started introducing me to other people and getting me to socialize with other AniTubers, aside from just making my own videos, doing my own thing. And in fact, Briggs is even helping me out editing this video because my workload is freaking insane. So thanks a ton, Briggs. He does a lot of great 7 Deadly Sins content too on his channel, All Day Anime. I will link it in the description of the video. Feel free to check him out. That would be awesome. But me still doing YouTube is thanks to you, man. And also thanks to everyone who I befriended along the way. This step 8 in Ban's development is his mental turning point, where for the first first time, he's positive. And while, yes, Meliodas gets credit for being the friend and the helping hand, a friend's pull alone can only pull one so far. It can take one out of the negative and bring them into the neutral. Getting into a positive mental state, though, that requires personal growth. The ability to accept help altogether is crucial, but it can only get one so far. I only personally started feeling good about myself and my personal relationships when I started giving, and that is Ban's step number 9. Ban not sharing his personal life and stoppering it, acting only as though his friends were there to alleviate and preoccupy his pain, that's the sin of greed, using them for personal gain, even though it's obviously not to their detriment. That's the mindset he was in when he tried to kill Meliodas. Now, the next stage, the neutral stage, that's the accept help stage, which is insanely difficult to open up as well to anyone, but making the decision to help Meliodas as an equal in a situation where he has to tear off his mental bandages to do so, that left his old greed in the dust. That's when his mindset finally became neutral, embracing Meliodas' psychological assistance without his knowledge for the first time. This is the path to a cure, but really it's still a patch. Step number 9 is where the cure begins, and that is selflessly giving, which, by the way, is the antithesis to greed, and this is where the theme of his character converges with his character's psychology. The mindset of giving is an actual potential cure to mental affliction. It's totally different than any mindset that you can have doing anything else. That's the truth of the matter in the world of the 7 deadly sins, and honestly, there's a lot of truth to that in the real world as well. So, I'm gonna mention some slight manga spoilers without really spoiling. If you want to wait 45 years until season 3 or 4, however you want to count the seasons, feel free to do so, and skip to the timestamp on screen. But in any case, Ban literally took a several thousand-year, painful, selfless journey to the literal depths of hell for his friend. And for the first time in the series, he's genuinely happy. Him meeting up with Meliodas in Purgatory was the 3rd scene of the series that really moved me. Because in Purgatory, Ban was genuinely happy. I see myself a lot in Ban's mental journey, and he finally reached a stage where he could smile and mean it. Now that he's gotten out of his mental stupor, I assume step number 10 will be a happily ever after for him and Elaine by the end of the series. But this is why Ban is my favorite character in the 7 deadly sins, and one of my favorite characters ever. I'm sorry this video turned out a bit sappier than usual, but I felt like it was the only way to really get my feelings across. And if anything I said resonated with you, don't be afraid to open up to someone, and don't be afraid to give. But this is why I consider Ban to be the heart of the 7 deadly sins. The holy trinity of the sins being Meliodas, Ban, and Escsanor each possess psychological burdens that they mask. Ban with rambunctiousness, Meliodas with complacency, and Escsanor with pride to the extent that he doesn't even know how much he's hurting. Link in the description at the end of my video to the Escsanor video, which is one of my favorite videos I've ever made, but in all of anime, I can only think of a small handful of characters with relatable psychological development on par with Ban, the selfless sin of greed, and my favorite character in the 7 deadly sins. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, feel free to leave a like, and if you want more content on any anime or 7 deadly sins, I guess, feel free to subscribe with the notification bell on, preferably. I appreciate you taking your time to watch this video. Again, I apologize that it was not as lighthearted as the usual stuff, but this was an analysis of an anime character that covered some really important real-life shiz, and I hope it could be taken in a positive way. Link in the description to my Twitter. Feel free to follow me there. That would be awesome. Also, link to my merch. Still got some supply left of the Oru Brightu merch. Link to All Day Anime, Briggs' YouTube channel. Definitely feel free to go say hi. And also link in the description to my Patreon, where all patrons are invited to the Discord server. And I especially wanted to thank King Beat My Meat, Sage of Snake, Pop-Up, Grumpy Welshman, Lazy Ronan, Girthy Worm Jin, Allison Stricker, JD Fincher, Laser Sash, Ethan Price, Frisky Dingo, Soy Boy Theories, MD, Q, Praise Lord the Girugameshu, Billy Thompson, Lord Twigo's Priestess, Salve Says, Gremmin, Sergeant Malarkey, Alan Weebus, Divine Reigns, Miku, and TM Philly. Also wanted to thank the Lord Twigo rank, where yes, Ban was a more relatable character than Lord Twigo, cause how can mere foolish mortals like us relate to Lord Twigo, am I right? Thanks to Anthony Booth, Cream My Pancake, Emir Zekic, Rari, Necro Zindergarten, Cortland Ewing, Zombie Misha, and Kyle the Warrior. Of course, thanks to the God Usopp rank, Tyler Schumacher, Dark Element, Sonny Parks, and Maurice Louis Dreyfus. I wholeheartedly appreciate all your support, and I appreciate everyone who watched the video until this point. Don't be afraid to open up to others, even if admittedly you're weird, because remember, don't mask it. Stay weird, fam.